I can't deny it. When we lose against G2, we go mental.
I want someone to hold me the way Juhan holds this team together. That's what I think he's so good.
Marek played 60 games of solo queue. This week, it's the highest amount of solo queue.
Hello everyone and welcome to EUphoria episode 14 ahead of the summer split week 3 regular season. As always, we're available on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.
Today we brought in Nightshare from Fnatic to talk crap on all the other teams and make sure that he's just dissing them across the board.
Yeah.
But also then to find out a little bit about his coaching philosophy and how he thinks Fnatic are going to do over the course of the upcoming year.
Yeah, mostly it's just him roasting every other team.
Disgraceful.
No, it's a lot of conversation about Fnatic. If you wanted to know kind of more behind the scenes about how they work, how it's working so well, and everything else, this is going to be a great episode for you to check out. But of course, we talk about a lot of other teams too. Let's get into it. Here we are, another beautiful day, bright and early in the morning.
In LEC land.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Are you
in LEC land?
I like it.
In the fantasy world known as LEC, where you work 6-day weeks and only think about esports at all times.
I think I am.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I'm the main character, but I think I'm in the LEC land there.
You're deep in the Delulu,
So are you there? I feel like there's different kinds of coaches, right? There are coaches who embrace what I will call the degenerate pro lifestyle, where they're up till 3 a.m. and they're up at noon, like right before scrim starts, like 30 minutes ahead of their pros, because they're professionals. Got to be like, or are you like normal sleep schedule, waking up consistent time, you do stuff, and then you go to scrims? Like, what version of esports person are you?
I think the second one. And actually, this is an interesting question because this split, honestly, we've tried to minimize the workload on the players, and we are trying to be more efficient with the time. So we're basically actually going from the double block, it was like the main thing for everyone. We're forcing just single block 5 games and having very short breaks, like 15-minute review times. I'll tell you something, for some teams that is hard, okay?
Yeah.
And we just go 5 high quality games. We are tracking sleep for the players also.
Damn.
They are responsible for it. If they're not responsible for their sleep, they will spin the wheel. We have like a responsibility wheel and all that. So yeah, I would say the second.
Wait, what's on the responsibility wheel? I had another story I was going to ask you about, but I need to know what is on the responsibility wheel.
I mean, there are a bunch of things, right? I think actually Twitter could actually see one of the thing where Marek was late. And he spinned the wheel, and he actually had a punishment of tweeting what was the offense, right? So he was, I think June wrote "I was late" on his forehead, and he had to take a selfie and post it on his Twitter. So a bunch of like silly things like this, and then punishment like team coffee, team burpees, etc. Right? So
is it the whole team has to do burpees?
That one is favorite for us, and I think as of now we did like 150 burpees already.
Oh my god,
it's crazy.
Well, you're going to be jacked. That much I know. We were talking to Ramal the other day, and he's like, yeah, Mickey can do 50 push-ups. And then Duffman was like, Ramal, why don't you tell him why we know that? And he's like, because Mickey was so late to scrims, he had to do 50 push-ups. So it seems you're not the only team.
Yeah, I feel it.
You're not the only team that is on the punishment game. But I respect the team angle. I cannot imagine something that would make me like show up on time sooner than the hatred I would get from Rob.
I was going to say, the mental collapse that you have, if your teammate's late, you're like, I'm never ganking this man. This man is on his own for the entirety of this block.
You just made me do 20 burpees at the start of the day because you couldn't sleep? Like, no, sir.
Do you have to do you have an app then where you can see if your players are sleeping?
So
and you're just like the mom who comes in like, get to bed!
They've got cameras in the room and he's just sitting there all hours of the night taking notes.
Sadly, we're not there yet, right? I would love to, but I trust them. We have I wouldn't call it a spreadsheet, but form kind of where they come into the office and they just feel, oh, I went to bed at this time, I woke up at this time, this is how I feel today. I'm checking it usually in the morning, so I know a bit of the story, right? Yeah. And then if they, for example, we agreed on sleeping half an hour at the same time and waking up at the same time. So if that changes, I'll get alert, basically. And then I'm like, hey, wait, you come here. What did you do last night, right? Why are you sleeping so late, for example? Then we just talk, and then it's just natural, kind of.
Is there anyone that was like had a particularly hard time adjusting to having a more tracked sleep schedule?
If I speak, big problem.
Okay. Fair enough, yeah. I mean, I'm fishing. I want to know. I want the drama. But if you can't give it to me,
I will respect them.
Yeah. I mean, it's, their right to privacy as much as you can give a public
top
personality.
To bot is 1 blink, 2 blink, 3 blink.
Yeah, because I can imagine that the esports pro grind to get here is be up until 6 a.m, play 30 LEC games in a day. So I think the transition into the more responsible, more like, competitive sport-minded approach, it's always really funny to see how people handle that. Because I remember like in the early days, whenever like new players would come in back in the wild west of esports, 2017, 2018, it was like, we're really trying to get him to go to bed, but it's like 4 a.m. and he's still up playing solo queue, and you got a manager just screaming at him to go to sleep, and you have to like take the PC out of their room because they just can't be trusted.
It's the approach of electricity.
No Wi-Fi, no router. It's like you're living at home with the parents. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you've been a coach for a super, super long time, right? Like I think most people are going to know you through your brother, right? Like that's probably, but you've been around for much longer than I think most people appreciate just looking at your history online. You've been coaching for like 8 years.
I think it's over 8 years now. Yeah, man, something like that.
So like,
it's a crazy story.
Yeah. Before we talk about week 2 a little bit, I just wanted to know like, what was your initial introduction to esports? Obviously, your brother got into it, but like, why did you start off a coach? Did you want to be a pro first? Like, what was it that brought you to this particular life that you're leading now?
It's a funny story. I'll try to be as concise as possible. So basically, we grew up in a family of one PC only, right? And we were the allowance was to play only 4 hours maximum per day. And my brother got into tournaments, right? We used to play together, and he started to play with different teams, tournaments for like pocket money, like the snack money. I don't know what it was, go for lore or something like that. And because we're twins, my father couldn't tell the difference, right? So when he needed more time to play out the tournaments, I usually gave him like 2 or 3 hours of my time.
Wow,
and I was sitting, I was sitting behind him watching, right? And then that kind of is the beginning of it. Then after that, he became a pro, kind of, right? And he started to travel and live with the teams.
Kind of. Sorry, Freeze. Kind of a pro.
If I compare it to how it's now and how it used to be, right? It's kind of for me. And I used to, whenever I had the time in between my studies, I used to travel for a month, usually in the summer. And I lived with the team, and I was kind of helping the team. And back then it was usually just like a manager trying to be a coach, trying to be their mom, trying to be the household of the gaming house or whatever, right? So that was kind of the beginning. And then I kind of I was approached by some Czech people, and I started my own project in Czech. And then I kind of stopped helping my brother that much, and I started to focus on that one. And basically I was in Czech coaching for a long time until I finished the studies. And then finally, when I finished the studies, I was like, let's try esports full time now.
Nice.
Yeah, because you were with eSuper when they first made it to EU Masters, weren't you? Yeah. So what was kind of the transition then from like eSuper to, because you moved to
Immortals, yeah. So I was not very confident in coaching in English, right? Because, I mean, you have to use the language properly to coach people, right? So my brother back then, he was transitioning to become a coach at 100 Thieves. So he was going NA. So I said, okay, let's go NA together. Kind of, And I accepted the position as an assistant coach in academy. And I kind of gave myself a goal. If I don't make it in 2 years to LCS, I will go back to being a doctor or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of built myself up. And I became an LCS coach, and I was one split in Immortals. And then after that, I was kind of burned out because I was what you said, right? The degenerate 18 hours a day work. So I took a break, and I think that was like the best decision in past 3-4 years for me. because I was like studying, working on top of it, and then doing a lot of stuff, right? So I took like, I think 2 or 3 months fully off, and then I had the hunger again to compete, and I was missing it. And I did some tryouts, and I ended up in Fnatic basically. And yeah, we went through a huge rebuild, right? We started with the roster, then other stuff, and then here we are.
And things are now going well.
Yeah, things are going well. I mean, you've been here for like since 2016. I think the most turbulent year that like Fnatic has ever had. What before? I'm getting lost in the sauce here because I just love the history of this so much. We will talk about week 2 eventually, I promise. But like, what was last year like for you? Because last year was, from an outside perspective, one of the craziest years, you know, Fnatic had, and I imagine it was pretty tough. But like, what was your perspective on kind of the rapid changes that needed to happen, the team around you, your kind of position in this whole thing? How did that play out for you?
So if I start from the beginning, right? I kind of wanted to join Fnatic because I knew Marek from before, Humanoid. I've coached him in Isuba, how he said, right? It was like the Czech academy for the European players. I mean, we had like Patrick, we had Danik, we
solid players.
We had a lot of the good guys, and because of that, I was kind of confident. You know, like I looked at the roster. I know there's Marek. I know like how he could be or what he should be, kind of. And I see the roster being on like 9th, 8th, or whatever they finished at, and I'm like, no way. You know, like I have full confidence that this will work somehow. I came into the Fnatic and I was actually welcomed by Patrick quite openly, because I was a bit afraid, as it usually is in these orgs, that they don't want to change players or they want to like stick with what they have. And from the very beginning, I said like, look, the first step for me will be looking at the roster and realizing what pieces we want to keep and build around and what we need to change, right?
Yeah.
So there needs to be a rebuild, and they were very open to it, and they were like, yeah, sure. And there's no pushing back, and they kind of gave me full trust on it. So that was very nice, and it kind of started from there, right? I think, what was the first change we've done?
So you joined officially, right, in March. Crusher left, and then Oscarin and Advian both came up together. Right, that was the event, and then Wonder was essentially the first big change. I think that, and then after that it was Reckless for now, right? So that was, I mean, it was a big year. It's okay if it all blurs together. Now I totally get that.
It was a long year. I mean, the Wunder Oscar situation was kind of like just Wunder not feeling it. So I understand that. That was made before I came in. Oscar was, I mean, a rookie. You know, what I can actually say about that back then is he didn't have a good start.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were kind of hating on him. And then there was some, you know, disbelief or potential of like, hey, should we keep this piece or something? And I'm like, guys, what are you saying? Like, it's a rookie. This new format, I will be very honest, I think sucks for rookies insanely hard, because they are, you know, like coming into the split where they had 3 weeks and it's over. So
And what gave you that confidence to stick with him? Was this hey, we've seen this guy, what he can do in the Spanish league? Or was it like, hey, look, he's doing really well in scrims, it's just trying to get that confidence on stage? Or
I think it's the main aspect for me was actually the policy I had built back in Czech, where I was like, look, if you get a new player, you should know in 2 splits that this player has it or not. Like, you will actually realize, in some cases you will realize sooner. Some people are easier to read, some people are harder to read. So my policy is kind of always give a player at least 2 splits to prove himself to me, basically, or like how I see it, right? And then after that, if I know he doesn't have it, he just needs to go.
Yeah. I mean, harsh in some circumstances, I'm sure, but also there are plenty of players who only get a single split in a format where our splits are 6 weeks. The least I feel like you could do is 2 splits, and obviously it's paying off big time now. I don't want to spend too much time in kind of 2023. So before we talk about 2024 and the slam dunk that is a 5-0 start, Fnatic summer going great. Let's talk a little bit about LEC as a whole. Week 2 just happened, and we took to Twitter to basically ask what the hell is happening, what the heck is happening, which players have the audience scratching their head and why. So let's step away from Fnatic a bit and hit the other pieces in the league, and we'll start with Benek163. I don't know. He's got the Rammus up. Thing. He says, why every time Jackie's plays insane, GX lose? So, I don't really, that specific question maybe we can get to directly, but just in general, Giant X, gentlemen, is the big question for me. Finally won a game. Mm-hmm. At the start, in week 1, I was very convinced this team wasn't making playoffs. It wasn't a hard call to make. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not so sure. How do you feel? Let's start with you, Nightshare. How do you feel about this team? What are your thoughts on Giant X generally right now?
Honestly, I always think of Giant X like these underdogs that can actually make the middle pack. And they can always be scary, So I actually respect them. I believe, though, that maybe it's just my read, but maybe this split, they are less scary than they used to be, honestly. And maybe it's just Antonio needs more time or like overall how they changed a lot of players, right? It's a new team again, so they need to build again like their synergy and everything, how they play. And on the other hand, to answer the Jackie's kind of a part of the question, I've always had my eyes on him because he's Czech.
I was about to ask. I was like the Czech mid laner. Yeah,
he was playing pretty decent or mechanically very gifted, and he had like he was giving me these vibes of he will make it a LEC and he needs more time. And honestly, I believe in the previous splits, like he was not playing that well. And I think as of now, he's finally like getting to the point where he's starting to play really well. He's also forcing, that might not be seen so much, but he's also forcing the team to play a lot around him.
Yeah.
And then honestly, I think I can say this. Sorry, Cass, if I'm like spoiling any scouting for the enemy teams. But I think Giant X, we always book them when we want to practice against a team who was kind of the best at controlling mid and playing through mid and around it with vision. Because you can see a lot of like even the top laner goes toward around mid, like it's crazy.
I was gonna say, I think people are noticing they're playing around Jackie. So like that Boris mid game, it was like, all right, is Jackie's involved? We're not doing anything. Is Jackie's involved? Okay, now it's time to make a play. Like, and this is the thing that I'm excited about because Jackie's, we were all kind of skeptical about how good he was, and you probably had more experience watching him than I did, right? Because outside of the competitive time he spent in the Czech league, he wasn't even really an EMEA Masters guy. He hadn't even really hit that level. And so he was the quote unquote, money ball scout. Like they had the perfect stats, the analysis to say that this guy was coming up. And the first 2 splits, it was like many of our new players, he was kind of just a Nico merchant, as I feel like is the trend for rookie mid laners on stage.
Was pretty good,
Nico was pretty good Nico merchant. But now this split, it's like he's doing the Yone TikTok combos. Sometimes he's doing them unnecessarily. Sometimes you're like, why are you doing the Yone TikTok combo? But in general, it just feels like everyone has like come together just to play through this guy.
Yeah, I do feel though that they're better than the scoreline. Like they're 1-4 at the moment, and like let's be real, Heretics, the game wasn't great for them. But then they played you guys. They played SK, who were also looking really, really good. They should have won that game against G2. Like they fumbled the end of it, and then they beat MDK, right? So realistically, I'm relatively confident about this team. And I think Jackie's looks great, but I think Juhan's been absolutely insane on this team. Like, I think he's been a really big step up. I think he's really good at tracking the enemy jungle. And I want someone to hold me the way Juhan holds this team together. That's what I think he's so good in the early stages of just being like, hey, I'm going to like shadow bots so they can push out pretty consistently. I'm going to shadow mid so he can do his thing. Like, I actually think this team is starting to get an identity that's really, really cool. And I think as we start to move in, like this is one of the teams I see hitting playoffs. And I think by that stage, they're going to hit their stride and actually be like, okay, we can start to do some things.
I always thought that Giant X felt like a pretty well-coached team in terms of early game. Like, it always feels pretty rehearsed.
Yeah.
Sometimes when it goes off script, I think they lose the plot. But, like, you saw a lot of the games last season.
You can see the identity of Gus, actually, I think.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Bam. Like, very much early game, very well rehearsed.
Yeah.
But week 1, not a fan of Juhan. I was like, this feels like, same exact problems Peach had. But I do agree week 2 is a step up. What's your thought on them making playoffs? Obviously, it's tough to say. A lot of it will come down to schedule. I think they've got a decent schedule, but when you look at the competition around them, right, there's a lot of teams that are how good are they, right? Like, where would you? I don't want to put you in this position where you have to roast people.
I just get like, you just asked me, how are they? And like, I wanted to say everyone is.
I mean, well,
so everyone can make it, honestly.
Do you think Giant X are a front runner for you, or do you think Giant X are kind of just another name in the pack of teams that could make it?
Well, they are indeed in really tough spot now, because even from screwing them, even from playing them, they're a team that actually like does pretty well. Of it seems like what they're coached to do, they kind of do well, and they replicate it almost every game, as you said, right? But then they're doing so many individual mistakes that are causing them the games. And it's like really crazy, the mistakes they're making, right? And because of that, that's actually a big worrying fact for me. Because if you actually see the players doing these mistakes, either in teamfight positioning or like team fighting or positioning or moving around the map overall, then it's a red flag for them to actually making it to the playoffs.
Yeah.
But if they actually can fix this, I believe they should almost 99% be in the playoffs for me.
And as a coach, like, how easy do you feel like that is to fix? Or is it just like hey, this is like an attitude to the game kind of thing? Or
Well, if it would be, for example, longer split, then it's easier to fix, right? But with them losing, split being short, all the pressure on them, and I mean, honestly, this one is harder to fix than some of the macro mistakes or patterns, because that's replicable. You can always do the same, basically, right? And this is more on how they click. Okay. So it's harder to fix for sure. And then with the pressure and losing and everything, it might be. That's why I'm saying they're in a tough spot.
Yeah,
right,
they're in a tough spot. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And if you look at their upcoming schedule, they play Vitality this week, who've been looking better after the week 1 was tough. They play BDS this week, and both those are going to be really tough matchups. Their only saving grace is that their last 2 opponents are Rogue and KC, who I think comparatively look much weaker. But even then, it doesn't feel like you can say they're going to be one of the teams that like gets 4 wins and is like clearly there, right? They're going to be fighting for tiebreakers and head-to-head, and I think anything to get through. I'm hopeful that they can do more. Again, I think a team that so obviously plays around mid, like, if they were a top 3 team in the league, I'd be like, oh, I wish they could show us more, but they're not. So I'm like, yes, great. Like, have an identity. Do the one thing really good. Because I think there's so many teams that don't even have that one thing right now. And speaking of, let's get our question from Arkia Dreaming 3700. Damn, there's what? Why is Wonder never allowed to play carries anymore? He was such a blast to watch in 2018/2019. Now, you'll notice what I'm doing here is just using these questions to set us up to talk about teams. But you coached Wonder. You were around for the Wonder. Where do you think like Wonder is at his best as a player? Do you feel like carries are what he should be doing when you look at this Heretics lineup? Or do you feel like Wonder on the Gragas, Wonder on the Tanky Boys is like the best option?
I think I will answer indirectly, kind of.
Sure.
Because for me, what was the best about Wonder was actually how he's preparing against individual matchup that he's facing either on the weekend in the B1s or B of like best of series. And honestly, I would like recommend, or the approach I would take with Wonder is just like whatever he wants to play into that guy, and he's preparing and he's very specific about, because he can get very specific about, right? Like he will go do all the one-on-ones, he will try all the starts, E, Q, W start, different runes, like different approach to managing the wave. So I think it's just whatever he wants to put time in, kind of support him in that way, a bit shape him, like also from the coach perspective. Okay, so what do you need him in the team to do? What the team needs him to do? Like, does he need to be a tank player? Does he need to be a carry player, right? That also depends on the team. Do I know Heretics that well? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know what he specifically needs to do in that team, right? But if I would answer that question, I think he can play carries. He can play also the tanks. I would have him more as a kind of the chunky boy player, right? But again, whatever he puts energy and time into, I would give him a free reign and I would support him in it if it fits the playstyle that Heretics coaches or coaching staff chose for the team.
Rob, I know your take on this. So before we go to you, I want to ask you, without being primed by Rob's take, what do you think Heretics playstyle is right now? Like, if you had to define what Heretics is doing or trying to do in the games that you've seen, or scrims that you've seen, like, what do you think it is that they do well? What do you think for the average Joe out there, how would you define their identity? Because obviously for Giant X, it's easy. Like Jackies, they play through mid. Great, right?
Yeah.
Easy. Is there an easy way to summarize what Team Heretics are doing? Is there something simple that we can...
I mean, we haven't prepared against DM yet, this split. We have played only one scrim actually yesterday against them, and
you play them in week 4, so I can understand why. Yeah. You're only 2 weeks away, so I don't want you to give away all the secret sauce.
Who is Heretics? No, I mean, to be honest, I don't know if I'll hit the spot, but I don't want to offend anyone, or like identity wise, I think this team is not that strong in showing anything like as like strong identity, right? Because it's kind of like a blank for me, because like bot is whatever, top is whatever, jungle, uncles can do this, right? And then mid laners are actually pretty decent. I think, honestly believe that he's a good player. So it's like more of a, they'll just play the game, you know? It's not like you expect anything from them. I feel like bot lane always shined on like the weird stuff, like the Seraphine for Flacket, or when he was playing Draven and such. And Trimby also wants to, or he likes to play weird stuff.
Yep.
So
the OG Lux, well, not the OG, but the recent memory, the OG Lux abuser.
Also Soraka and stuff, I remember.
Yeah.
But I think I would have to prepare for them to answer this question like properly.
Well, you've already set it up beautifully. You've thrown the ball up in volleyball, and in Top Gun style, Rob is going to come down and knock it in. Because I know what you think, Rob. Say it for the people. Say it for the people, Rob. Tell them how you feel.
I know, it doesn't feel to me like this team has an identity at all, is my biggest problem. I was watching their VODs yesterday, and I think the one thing that enemy team has identified is like, if we just ward out Jankos and Jankos can't get involved in the early game, we're sorted. So you'll see like a ton of wards go down to just try and keep him in check. And then when it gets to that position, it's like, okay, well, bots kind of just farming, doing their thing. Mid and top are doing the same. And there's just no real plan, it feels like. Like oftentimes I'll see Jankos, it's like, okay, well, 6 minutes is here. I guess I'll try and sneak in and steal a couple of grubs, but I don't really have control over bot side to do dragon. I don't really have control over top to do anything, so maybe I can get a few of these. It kind of just feels like they're waiting for something to happen. But even then, when it's like, oh yeah, say like Rift Herald's on the map, it always feels like their plan is 1 layer or 2 layers deep. It doesn't really feel like they've got an after plan. Yeah. So even I think it was against KC, they got a kill at Rift Herald, and I was like, oh, at least from my perspective, I was like, they could take Rift Herald, and then they have a free move to top lane. They can shift, they can get top tower because KC died and we're moving to take bot tower. I was just like, no, we're just going to reset here. And I think it always feels like they're just not a step or 2 ahead, or there's not enough communication on what their plan should be in the game to actually go for it. I think that's the most confusing part to me, because the thing I always liked about Trimby was, and I saw when he joined Fnatic, was he loves to do this like overload a sideline play, which is you get to the mid game, they kind of go, hey, we can just en masse go top side and kill someone and pick someone off. And I was like, cool, that's going to be cool for Heretics to kind of have this now in their arsenal, because he feels like a Trimby special. He did it with Rogue, did it with Fnatic, he brings it to Heretics.
To be fair, you're also playing with Wonder and Jankos, and that's like G2 2019 in a nutshell. It's just like, oh, we're going to drop a tower and overload side lanes. All of Korea has never seen this before.
But it's like, where is that play? Like, that play just doesn't exist. And it feels like when I get to the mid game, I'm kind of just poking a bear with a stick, being like, come on, do something. Do it.
I honestly think it's just officials, because, for example, yesterday Trimby was pretty proactive. He was like wild roaming top also, and like all these kind of things. So I think maybe it's just official stress.
But that's the thing. Like, every so often you get this game where Trimby and Jankos link up, and I'm like, oh, sick, this is going to be it. And we saw it like 2 games, I think it was in spring, and we got like 1 game over the weekend. I was like, oh, like they actually can work together. I just don't know why it's not more often, because it looks good when they do it. It's just so irregular.
I mean, I wish we would play them more, right? So I could tell you more, but now,
exactly.
No, it's okay.
Don't
have to share anything more than what you feel you've got. I'll say it feels to me like this is like this team is an F1 pit crew. Like the pieces are so good. They've got a fucking fantastic car, excuse me. But they just don't have a driver. There's like no one to make use of all of these resources that they have put together. And I think that like you can make an argument that Wonder could play carries or that Frescowi could like demand that attention and demand those resources. But they're a team who, on paper, if they just have one clear point to play around and they can just simplify, and like I personally would love to see it be Flackid. Like this team could be really, really good. It's just that they're not doing a whole heck of a lot. When their players are ahead, it doesn't feel like they're making the most out of the leads that they do accrue. You see Wonder in a lot of matchups lose way less than he should in losing matchups, or win, a little bit more than expected, and then that just doesn't really turn into anything. And I think the same is true for a lot of the other players on the team right now. And maybe it is just officials, which would be really sad because, again, outside of Frescowi, these are like 4 of the most veteran players in our league.
You mean Spyro, no?
Spyro, excuse me. Sorry. Yeah. Outside of Spyro. Good catch. Sorry, Poland. Like these are 4 of our most veteran players in our league, right? Like you would hope that the transition from scrims to stage would be way easier for them. I know it's not as simple as you've played for a long time, therefore it's easy, right? But this is a team that I think is like pretty disappointing, all things considered, because it's like they should be good. They should be like at like a top 5, top 6 team, right? Like how much further they can go, that I think is always going to be debatable. But it shouldn't be a question as to whether or not this team is making playoffs, right? They've only beat GX and KC, which are, again, based on what we were talking about, teams that should be much further behind them in terms of development, right? Because they're new teams, new rosters. So
I think I'd just like to see them swap it up a bit. Like just try, hey, can we try and play around Flackid? Cool, that's not working. Well, let's try and play around Spyro. Maybe let Wonder bring out some of the carries. It just feels like they're just stuck in this perpetual loop of not being sure what they want to do. And then
I'll tell you what the teams need to do. Just pick scaling, bro.
The old classic,
like just pick scaling, easy 5v5 execution, team comps. And because like you see, this is the main difference between international and Europe, right?
Yeah.
Like at international, let's say that our enemy, let's say that Asian teams, they draft something that can do stuff early game. But then if you don't do stuff early game, you get outscaled at 25 minutes or 28 minutes and you cannot play, right? The game doesn't go more than 10 minutes, by the way. Like they're that good at using all the small details and advantages that they can get that it's insane. But in honestly in Europe, only G2 as of now does it, and no one else is doing it in officials.
Yeah.
And then for a lot of these losing teams or struggling teams, bro, just please pick an easy to execution 5v5 team comp that scales well. And it will go to 30 minutes. There will be a Drake fight. And you will either win the game or lose the game. And the easier the composition is to execute, the better chances you have of winning. Like pick your Vitalia or do
Say
something.
It again for the people in the back. Keep it simple, stupid. You're fighting for top 8. Just shut up and play Jinx. Dude, I agree. I'm so with you.
Really, right? So yeah, I would recommend, honestly, if people are struggling, more than what you said, right? Like trying, because it's a short split. I think that approach is actually a bit in wrong, because if you actually try, let's try to play around Flackid for a few games. It doesn't work. Let's try to play a few games around Wunder. You're off season, or you're in off season now. So just pick 5v5, simple execution. I think Heretics honestly is not bad. I think they'll get to their wins.
I think they are one of the teams, though, that because of the pedigree on it, you kind of have higher expectations. So I think that's why people are more disappointed.
Yeah, because you're like willing to give
them to be top.
You're willing to give GX a pass. There's 2 new players. Jack is his first year. Patrick Ignite, they're legends, right? But like Patrick's been on this organization that's been struggling constantly. Like their expectations are low. Whereas, I mean, TH brought in some all-stars, some star power. So I think people probably expect too much. Obviously, it's still a team that has to figure out how to play together and how to work together. But yeah, for right now, I like keeping it simple. I imagine we could say that to literally every team in the league. And like you guys, G2, BDS, maybe Vitality. Everyone else just like...
We'll keep that in mind when the next Nidalee gets locked into the
Oh my God. No, we're not talking about Rogue today. It's not happening.
I feel like only Canyon is allowed to play in the league.
Only Canyon, yes, thank you. Everyone in the world is saying it. It's like...
By the way, he somehow mind-controlled
everyone in the world. This champion is good. What?
Yeah.
And I'm also like, stop playing Caitlyn. Don't do it either. Again, same thing.
You have to be a Caitlyn player for Caitlyn to
well, and comp and upset both at probably at different points in their career have been Caitlyn players, but like you need to be the Caitlyn player if you're going to be. It's not enough to have played Caitlyn. You need to be the guy, like you talk about, exploiting every single little opportunity. Like Caitlyn's one of those picks, right?
If you play Caitlyn, enemy turret should be falling at 7 minutes.
Yep. Bring back Forgiven. The time is now. Our next question from Blake Bullard at Woodshop Engraver. The most head-scratching player is all of MDK. Finals to first split, and first split to whatever the heck is going on now. What the heck is going on now, gang? You want to go? You want to start, Rob?
I have no idea.
Succinct. We like that. Nothing is going on.
I think I have an idea actually because I said it back in, I think it was winter, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, we've not done the best in winter because we had June coming in and he didn't like speak English at all. So I think we didn't finish like in the top 4 or whatever. And somehow Mad Lions, they finished second in their rookie split. And the thing I was saying to my team and then like coaching stuff and others close by, I was like, this is the worst thing that can happen for this roster, by the way, because the meta, everything, what the game was being played, it suited them really well. It was built for them. More so, every other team was pretty bad in winter.
Yeah,
and they just somehow be second, right? And then I actually said, I mean, yeah, okay. Now it's about the ball is in the coaching stuff, kind of, because you guys will have a tough job to do. Because if you finish second in the rookie split, the ego will go through the roof. And then the moment something will not work and there will be like struggles and challenges, not just single challenge, but like really tough spot, I think that's where they will crumble. And it will be up to them to actually pick up the pieces and build it together again. And I think that's what's happening to Mad Lions. Because, you have such a good spring, then you see the tweets of, I don't know how to read it, right? But I think Supa was tweeting something of like, I'm the best at LEC, ADC, I will win worlds, etc. I don't know of what part it's like just being over egoistic, or how is it? How should I read it, right?
Yeah,
but it kind of tells me that I might be a bit of an issue. And then you come into the next split and nothing is working, And then suddenly I think they're just going through like a mental breakdown, maybe.
Maybe.
And then,
you said that so casually. You're like, maybe mental breakdown. Maybe full mental boom.
Maybe they're full boom. Yeah.
And they just need to kind of build it up again, So you could even see in the last week, actually, LEC, they were like trying this Ivern, first big Ivern 1-2, going back to that. So they're like, they're trying your approach of like, oh, let's got to this
try something
point.
Yeah.
This was working in the past. Let's see. I think they will drop that now and they will try something different. So we'll see. But they're in really tough spot.
Yeah, I think you can kind of see the overconfidence in their play as well. Like I think back to that KC game and I was just like, all right, guys, you're in complete control here. All you have to do is just slowly like play out your lanes properly, push in, like take towers. You can just play it by the book and you're fine. And it kind of just became a case of, hey, we're just going to brute force our way through this all the time and see if we can make it happen. But it came back to bite them where Upset was able to have that great performance in the Jinx. But it definitely just feels like this team, they just don't have the, I don't know. Yeah, it just feels like overconfidence at times where they just feel like they can force plays or they can outplay in a 2v2 and it just comes back to bite them.
But all these like discipline, patience in the game, like going with the 100% play, all this actually, from my experience, I can put hand into the fire for this, signifies if the team is mentally stable or not. Because even us, Fnatic, now we actually play really disciplined in some games. In some games still.
I was like, yes, please, Fnatic coach, tell us about mental discipline.
Guys, I know a bit about that. So that shows, if you actually make mistakes in discipline, patience, all this, it's like most likely telling me that they are going through like.
Yeah, and like, look, regardless of the context, the reality is the results aren't there. Like, they should have won the KC game, but they didn't, and that's probably going to haunt them when we get closer and closer to the playoffs race. But right now, I think Mad don't make playoffs. Like, I think the two teams for me that don't make playoffs right now are Mad and Rogue, right? And I think they'll both get the opportunity to prove me wrong. But this is a team that I think has lost a lot of the thing that made them good. And obviously the thing that made them good isn't really as prevalent anymore as the meta has shifted. A lot of that early aggression, a lot of their willingness to take fights, a lot of the fact that the other teams are now just, more coordinated than they were in winter, not as exploitable.
One more week than normal. I would actually, honestly, seeing them as of now, I would fully agree with you. If it would be the last,
if it was the last
split format, because that's one more week and it's over.
Yeah.
But they have 2 more weeks, so I think there is still a chance for them to turn it around. But again, it's all on the players and the coaching staff to actually just. I mean, I think we've been there with Fnatic the first split when we were like 0-5.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's good luck, guys.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough task. We'll see if they can kind of come back together. They seem like the team still has a good relationship, and I just hope that they find that moment where they can all come together. Rogue went to Malmö and suddenly all the mental boom was gone and they won a split. Like, maybe they can find that, the power of friendship. I mean, sometimes, who knows what it takes. They all go out and party together. Who knows? Whatever it takes, I hope that they find that. Last question, and an opportunity for us to transition into, I think, the biggest topic of the episode. We've already talked a little bit about Fnatic, but here, Adu at I'm just going to assume it's Adu 52. Humanoid. Why isn't he running it down in the regular split anymore? What happened to my mid laner? Answer for your crimes, Nightshare. Where is my favorite top 2 mid laner?
The lights dim just as so. What's happened?
He's only supposed to be good when the competition is difficult. Okay, he's supposed to flip a coin for all the mess. What did you do? What happened? Why is he playing good consistently?
I mean, they made mages more OP.
Way seems good.
I mean, Marek was someone who was like complaining for, I believe, maybe past 3 years that like the state of mid is not that good, and in the last patches they actually buffed or made AP items a bit stronger. But honestly, I don't think it's like a mix of everything, right? I think also what helped is playing against Chovy finally in MSI, because after playing against Chovy, he was, like, guys, it's like there's Chovy, then there's nothing, and then maybe there's like a Showmaker and others, there's such a huge difference. And then he was always someone who was like very good at seeing all the small things, details. Like, he's just the player that he will exploit everything to the maximum, and he's very good at understanding all the small details and putting them together. He has insane brain for that. So in that way, he's actually met a challenger who's actually better at this, even better than him. And then I think that kind of ignited a bit of spark in him.
Yeah.
Because before he was, even if he's not trying his hardest, you just come to LEC and everyone is not that great in this aspect. And he just, because of that, he's like, I don't need to do that much because I will be still better than them, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe because of this, he got a bit hunger back. But I think for him, it's also a lot about like lifestyle and the routines that he has. And he put a lot of effort and energy into building stable routines. And I think that helps him a lot also.
Yeah, I think it's cool, that moment, right, where you kind of, because I think that one of the greatest things about Humanoid's story in general is that, like, it's all been very, like, everyone kind of knows. It's all been very public, right? Like, he is and has been, it seems like super motivated by competition, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's a double-edged sword. There are going to be people that are cranky with him when he shows up to a regular season game and doesn't take it super seriously. But like, how many of us can force ourselves to be motivated? You know what I mean? Like, how many of you are going to go play Super Smash Bros. With your little brother and after the 10th round of trouncing and be like, yeah, I can go for an 11th. And sorry to everyone in LEC that I just called a little brother in Super Smash Bros. But like, you know what I mean? And I think that moment is such a cool moment where he goes, wait a second, like, as good as I think I am, I'm still all the way at the bottom. Oh, I was going to use a mountain reference, old Fnatic. I'm still at the bottom of this mountain. You know, like I made it up this first section, but there's still an entire more to go. And the fact that that has stuck with him, I think is like such a cool thing to hear, because one of the most frustrating things about our league, right, I think, is that there's caps very often, and then there's always someone who is contesting him. And for a long time, it was Mark, and obviously now I do think it is Mark. There was a period in time when it was Larson. There's a period in time where it was Nemesis. But it's never consistently been like, here are our top 3, top 4 mids. It's like caps and like who's ever in form, right? And so the idea that Mark is going to hit this evolution as someone who's like watched this guy for years, and that it's from Chovy, like, man, that's cool. That's so sick. So
yeah, I mean, we actually had like before the split, we always have like this feedback session kind of, and I actually said to Marek, right? I said, look, I think I'll no longer like push you the way I was forcing you sometimes in before the splits, but I'll just say this, you know, like I believe it's Caps having all these titles and everything, and it should be you also having. And if Caps now has the titles, like 90% of the titles, I believe if you have the hunger and if you put everything into it, you should be 50-50. You should be getting the same amount of titles and finals and everything as him, right? And it's up to you if you want to do it or not. And then it's how he maintains his hunger and the motivation. And then, yeah, I mean, the aspect of the last thing I'll say is like, if someone is not treating a game like, I actually believe you should treat official game, or you should treat every single game of you play, even scrims, even to some extent solo queue. It's like a bit like a honeymoon story, right?
Yeah.
The solo queue is maybe hard, but every scrim, every official, you should treat exactly the same.
Yeah.
Because if you treat it differently, then you play differently, and then the more you know, it's like the more you respect, oh my god, it's finals, or oh my god, it's international, you will not perform, right? So I think this part of Marek, or how he's being usually described like this, I think this is gravely misunderstood, because I think this is one of his best strengths, because even if it would be World Finals, he's not stressed because it's World Finals, right? He just doesn't care. And then that's being perceived wrongly, I think. And a lot of more of competitors, right, if they have the same approach, they would do better.
Yeah. Do you think that, because I don't want to misrepresent Mark here, especially when he's not here to speak for himself. So I appreciate you providing his perspective, because I don't want to just
I'm providing my perspective.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
but I don't want
Marek
to, I don't want to tell a one-sided story here, but do you see it, can it be a double-edged sword, do you think, where it's like sometimes like, yeah, like he's unfazed no matter who he's playing against. But at the same time, do you think that sometimes that, like, because in the past, he hasn't always, from an outside perspective or from the interviews we've heard and the content we've seen, hasn't always been the most motivated against players he doesn't perceive as good. So that kind of indifference, is it also been something that's been a struggle? Or do you think it's like...
I don't think it is.
Yeah?
I don't think it is. Like, it's... No, I would say no. It's not an issue.
Nice. Do you think that it's ever been an issue? I'm just trying to understand, like, do you think that the story that Humanoid...
I mean, again, right, we would have to ask him, because he's the most... I'm just kind of picking up the bits and putting it together into a story that, as from my POV. But I think it's not an issue at all, and it never was. So and I don't think it's just about like who he faces, right? It's also about how he sees his team, that he, you know, like it is very, like, what people don't realize, the burden of being the best on the team and continuously seeing, I'm not saying he's the best on the team now, I'm just making a story of,
there have been certainly points where he has played on rosters where he has been the best on the team.
By far, for example, and then you continuously see, you know, people underperform or do very basic fundamental mistakes that you see as, if you want to be on this level, you should not be doing these fundamental mistakes, and that is LEC indeed in a lot of times, right? Then it's not about who you face. It's just you're just losing hope, because or it's very tough, and you have to also work on that part because as a leader, you have to always try to build these people up, even if they're struggling and they're repeating the same mistakes over and over again. And that's the same story for coaches, right? Like if someone does the same mistake 10 times over and over, do you think I'm not getting affected? I am. But I just cannot show it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's like this topic is like so huge, and I think a lot of people just tend to put staples on things, like, he's not performing because he's not taking it seriously or something. It's like just huge topic that can be missed.
I talked to Peter Dunn back when he was on Mad Lions and was working with him, and he was saying that one of the things that people don't respect or maybe see behind the scenes about Marek is that Peter Dunn walked into the office one day. It was like super late at night. He thought everyone had gone home, and Humanoid is sitting there with some of the players, going through VODs, teaching them, well, not teaching them so much, but like going, reviewing, hey, look, this is how you can do it. This is, reviewing, making sure that they are, and like the amount of effort that he does put in behind the scenes with teammates and players to make sure that he can bring up people alongside him just being incredibly good, which I think is, and kind of shows how much hunger for performing and bringing people up, which I think is just such a cool story for him as well, alongside his own personal performance.
Yeah, I mean, on to second this, in the feedback, what I said, right? I said, even if you wouldn't have coaches, I think if you put everything into it, you should do 50-50 with Caps for the titles, right? Even if they maybe have a better players, if they have better infrastructure, who cares, right? You could be that kind of a guy. So he is that kind of a guy, and it's just about him.
Yeah. I think that it's really good to have that perspective here, because I think that like a couple of key moments in his career have really painted his struggles with motivation as like disinterest, right? Like there's like the Tomorrowland thing. There's the like, and I think obviously like you can
it's
say
just his personality.
Yeah.
Like
No.
Jokey,
And that's great. Like I'm glad that he has that level of personality that he is joking, but it's really good to hear the other side of the story where we get to see him as this guy who is really hardworking, because I think it's motivation.
Guys, Marek played 60 games of solo queue. This week, it's the highest amount of solo queue.
All right, before this turns into...
before his bedtime as well.
Before this turns into the Fnatic propaganda podcast. All right, I'll just say that it's good to have another perspective here, because I think that while I've always believed that Mark has been really good, my understanding of what does and doesn't motivate him was limited to a couple of instances. Mm-hmm. And so I think giving the world more examples.
It's very broad.
It's very broad. And motivation, like I think it'd be hard for you to say that like him finding what motivates him, it hasn't been a journey and a process, right? But it's good to know that it's not as simple, or as maybe like it's not as simple as, Tomorrowland's coming and he'd rather be at Tomorrowland, or as simple as, he plays to the level of his opponents, even if it might have manifested on stage once or twice that way, right? That it's really just about Marek versus himself to a certain degree, if we're going to see that best form.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you for sharing the insight there. Also, the Peter Dunn thing, I forgot about that. I think we'd also talked about that, but that's been quite a long time coming. Shout out to Marek. Don't get too cocky. I expect an EDM festival tweet soon.
He will, he will balance it out. Guys, I got praised on the EUphoria, so I have to.
Yeah, he has to just run it on stage. There's a curse. There are a lot of people who believe there's a curse. So if you go 0-2 this week, it's our fault, according to the. I'm sorry. I don't think it's real. I also don't think it's statistically real. Someone did the math. It's not true at all. But people are paranoid, man. Yeah. You got to cater to them sometimes. So this year, Humanoid, great story with Chovy, but across the board, it just feels like even coming into the split, you guys look more dominant, more consistent than you did. Obviously, MSI left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. Yours probably included. Very angry. Is that the big catalyst for change, is being angry after losing to Team Liquid? Like, what do you think?
Honestly, I think it is part of it. But what we have to say here is, I'm confident that we actually have been leveling up every split from winter, spring to summer, right? So now, as of now, we are aiming to be at the best form for the summer split worlds and everything, right? And the Revenge International Tournament. But I think big part of it also was because in some aspects of our processes and practices and how we approach those practice scrims and everything, I think MSI kind of dealt the fatal damage, you know, whereas like we became angry after losing against NA, and then that kind of fully opened up the gates of what we were trying to do. We had more buy-in from the players, and now because of that, we are actually treating practice the best way we've treated since I joined Fnatic, right? So I think that's all of that is kind of the catalyst. Indeed, was the MSI, the kick in the, you know.
But I think that like it's good that I can understand how something as ego crushing as losing to TL, especially when I heard behind the scenes that like they were not excited about facing you. Like no, they should have. I heard that even like that they were like, this is like people that I had talked to who had been in scrims, and I won't say specific names, were like, this is not a good matchup for us.
Yeah.
Like this is Fnatic are like, there's a lot of teams we would rather play. There are Asian teams we would rather play than play Fnatic. And then obviously on the day.
But that's the Fnatic way, you know? Yeah. Like, you just, one day you can, like, I love the narrative. I don't know where I heard it. Like, I love the best thing about Fnatic is their capability of playing towards enemy level or something like that. I'm like, yup, that sounds like us. So I guess, I mean, needless to say, it's like this was a topic already before MSI, and we knew it's an issue, and we were working on it, because basically in spring when we lost against G2 in the best of 3, I think it was spring, then we kind of dropped the ball in practice. We went a bit mental, you know, and we lost a lot of the good habits and everything that we've been building into practice, and therefore because of that we've started to play really poorly. So as of now, it's going pretty well, but it's going too well, and there is like this, you know, in my back.
Yeah, like, in the back of your head, whisper.
So when it's coming, you know, and then it's up to us and for the players how we handle it and how we maintain our consistency. Because I believe if we maintain our consistency and we keep leveling up and then have good understanding of the meta, which we had so far, I feel like this is the split, boys.
Damn, I love the confidence. Because I had like 3 different ways to try to bait you into saying that, but you just said it. So I think that one of the big things for me, right, is that like obviously everyone's on board now, and you talked about what happens when there is a loss. You know, like what does that look like? How does that affect the team? Because right now you're angry, momentum, 5 wins, like nothing's stopping you. But if something does stop or slow you, I'm curious, like, How do you as a coach and how do you guys as a staff behind the scenes as Fnatic handle that? Because I think that you've talked about it and we've seen it in the content pieces released. Your team and your players are very emotional, right? And when they're feeling it and they're good, they're really good. But as we saw versus TL, you know, wrong day, wrong circumstances. And I think someone was sick as well, right? So there's like a lot of stuff stacked against you, but you're a team that has shown, as you mentioned, the propensity to play at a lot of different levels given circumstances on the day. But how do you manage and like make sure that these guys are showing up in their best form? Like, what have you learned through coaching this team? What is your strategy when it comes to righting the ship when like something is going wrong?
So for us, it's all about the practice. How we practice then tends to transform into how we play on stage and overall. So it's just a lot about lowering the amount of how many games we play. We just play 5 games. We're forcing single block. Very short reviews, very specific reviews. We have a lot of set plays that we repeat and replicate almost every game. So we're trying to put, basically the idea behind all this is to put systems in place or processes into place where even if you wake them up at 3 a.m. and they're grumpy and they didn't eat and they, you know, whatever, they're sick, even on the worst day possible, there will be systems in place that will kind of hold them to a certain level and help them in the either if they're choking or whatever you want to say, right, in the worst possible times. So yeah, basically that's the main idea for us, and just maintaining that no matter what happens.
Do you worry that makes you more scalable then if you're kind of going for these repeat plays where teams can be ready for it? Or do you have enough in place where it's like...
I like this question a lot because look at Genji, by the way, and look at Genji last split. The only thing they've been doing every game is, early game. Bot lane, top lane swap. then we have a side lane tempo, or we can give up one wave. Let's go dive T1 on side lane. And they did it every single game. Everyone knew that they're doing it, but it's like it's kind of a double-edged sword that people know exactly what you will do.
Yeah,
but you are the best at it because you are doing it every single time, and you just know exactly how to do it. And you also know like the small variances and how everything functions. So then you will just who cares? Opponents know that it's coming. But
if you're just better at them, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think that there's always, whenever you talk about like building a system, right? There's always this middle ground I feel like you're trying to hit of how do we retain like make sure that players aren't getting lazy and like just falling into place. Like if you have a system that says how to play every single step of the game, right?
Well, it's not that rigid.
Sure. Your system isn't, right? But like this would be a bad system, right? It tells them every step of the play. If anything goes wrong in the system, it collapses. And you see that with some teams, right? Where like they're really good until a curveball happens or someone dies to a gank and it just shuts down.
That's usually the case how to break these teams. Honestly. No, it really is like.
And so like finding the middle ground where you have enough of a system that players are supported, but that they can still be creative and that they can still adapt to stuff on the fly is super fascinating to me, because I imagine it's like a lot of trial and error. Do you feel like you have a good idea of like how much structure your players need? Are you figuring it out?
I think I have to call out my boys here, because as of now, I have never seen them being better at individual level that they are at, all of them at this time, where even if they get like a bad draft or like how they play, right? A lot of what we learned at MSI also is how Asian teams play around cooldowns and how they move and do everything and hold zones and this kind of stuff. And we kind of we were pretty bad at it before, and they're getting better and better at it. And I think like sometimes I'm just watching us play and I'm like, guys, how is this working? Like, how are you so good, right? So I think we have now, it's like we have some set plays, but then a lot of it actually comes to the players and their deep understanding of the game and adaptability. And I think a lot of them actually, they are insanely knowledgeable people now, and they're very smart about the game. And we also learned how others are thinking, a lot of support jungle synergy and other stuff. So I just have to praise them like insanely well, because for now, it's like if we have a decent day, I think we will win against almost anyone on a decent day. And then we always win like this, right? And then it's only about the bad days. And then we are hoping that these systems, right, that these are mainly for the bad days, because usually you have it like if you do a set play, next 3 minutes you exactly know how the game will play out, because this kind of started a certain cycle, right?
Yep.
And then that helps if you're a bit stressed or you cannot like see the whole picture, you are not that clever around the game because you're stressed. That helps to calm down the players, right? And then they get into this state of repetitiveness that they've already experienced so many times. And then they breathe and they open up. And then after that, they can again go for, so the systems are basically the set. It's not even system. It's kind of like a set play, right?
Yeah.
It's there is, if you guys don't know what to do,
do this. Got it.
Right? And then because of that, then they get relieved a bit. And then they will know how to play the game. So that's how I would actually describe it, yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I like the kind of the talking about, freeing up mental space, having this fallback. So whatever the state of the game is, whatever your play is, and obviously don't divulge, but you have this reset point where, because you can kind of do it on autopilot, you can free up your brain or free up space in your head, availability for yourself, however you want to talk about it, to like mentally reset.
Yeah, I mean, this game is all about pattern recognition and what it means to, and what you do in these patterns, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Hell yeah. Pattern recognition, baby. It's just memory. It's just memory. It's just the game memory. You just flip things. You got to remember where they go. That's it. League of Legends.
No, but then it's also how you click, and that's again on my players there, like on our players there.
They click
insane.
Yeah, we need to start giving the set plays like chess names. You know, they've got all the openings.
They're castling. No, don't do that.
This is the Nightshare
Esports
Gambit.
already has a million buzzwords. We do not need I do not need to give the audience another 10 buzzwords to misuse in every single Reddit post-game thread. Like that is not what we need to do. Like just get 5 people in the room to agree what the hell tempo means, and then we can start adding new buzzwords, right? Because I think we all get it. We all get it, but get someone to define it, right? Like it's all right. It's a mess. Speaking of, games coming up, momentum, good. Your opponent this week, Fnatic, or your Fnatic, sorry, G2. Let's talk about that matchup.
I'm excited. I think, honestly, I actually, to defend the boys from G2, kind of, I've seen a lot of hate, or I can actually understand the narrative that they're not going well right now. But to be honest, if we would not lose against TL and we would go further in the MSI, we would do something similar to them, right? Coming late into the practice, because what people do not understand is how hard it is actually being at the top consistently, because you never have a break, right? Yeah. So I think in the maybe first 2 weeks, they were struggling a bit, but I believe that they will pick it up together. And I think against us, because it's kind of always a big match, and they also find this like very rival thing, you know, between Fnatic and G2. So I think they will honestly play the good old G2 game, and we will see if we are actually ready for them. I think we are, because if we get what we want, I think we will just go with the plays. We will just steamroll. No, I don't want to say steamroll them, but I think we will do really well against them. But again, it's just B1.
Yeah,
and, it's just you. What matters is it doesn't matter if you play now good or bad, kind of, honestly. The only thing that matters is if you play good at playoffs, and then if you
can win in the best of fives, can do what you got to do. When does it? Are G2 just always going to be that level of opponent where you're, sweating, you're prepping everything you possibly can? Like, is there any point where you're going to be able to look at G2 and go, no, for sure, we've got this? Or do you feel like even if this team showed up tomorrow, like half dead, and you're like, wow, they're really bad, like you'd still be wondering?
We would prepare to them exactly how we prepare to every single team. I don't think we're like, seeing them differently. I mean, I might say at some points it is a bit tougher or more tough to prepare against them, because what they can play, and how they play also. So it takes more time, mainly maybe the draft structure preparation. We usually prepare for the teams week ahead. So we do the draft simulations already before the practice, and we kind of try to simulate the drafts, or as close as possible to the drafts that we will face on the weekend against them. So maybe that takes, a bit longer against G2 to kind of like puzzle it together. How do we mind control enemy to play Draven here? So, I mean, outside of that, I think no difference.
When do you feel like you'll be able to say, like, we're better than G2? Do you just have to lift a trophy?
I don't think,
you have to beat them
that's
in a final?
anytime close. I think it's just about if we would win like 5 titles in a row, then we are better than G2, right? But if you win 1 title, let's be honest, okay? It's like how hard it is to win 1 title compared to how hard it is to win 5 consecutive.
Yeah.
So I don't think we are allowed to say at any point that we're better than G2, just simply of what they achieved. But honestly, we just aim to be challenging them, and then kind of being, there for them and them for us. Because if we aim to go international, if there is only one team in the competition who's like kind of stomping everyone, then if you go international, you don't perform that well on international because you don't have real competition, right? So hopefully it's just the rivalry, Fnatic G2, and it will go on. That's how we see it.
Okay. Yeah. As agreed, I'll slip you the 50 after the thing. You said the thing. You said the rivalry thing.
Yeah.
How do you guys, like, as a last note before we close out for the day? How do the players feel about it? We talk about it. I think the players, even though most players I talk to these days are like, rivalry, whatever. I see them on the day and they're sweating. Like, clearly, like, I think there's a certain amount that, like, people still care about it because it's still super duper hyped up. Like, how do you feel about it personally? Do you feel more motivated? Do you just try to treat it like it's another opponent? Do you think at all about the history between the two orgs or the big legacy dynasty kings narrative, like whatever, right? Like, but how do you feel about it?
I honestly don't feel any of it outside of just, I mean, for me, it's like how we play. And it's just, I have a vision of a certain way of playing or like a certain level of play that will be enough for international. So we don't, disgrace Europe or whatever. And outside of that, I don't really care. But I honestly see it. And I think actually G2 players, they treat it way more seriously than our players. Whenever I see them, they're like actually sweating,
Yeah.
But to be honest, the rivalry, it's there, because I can't deny it. When we lose against G2, we go mental.
Yeah.
We kind of like lose it a bit, because it's like the long-term goal of beating them and being able to beat them in best of fives and reach the title. So whenever we lose against them, it's like you can feel it. It's definitely there for both of the teams. I just believe that maybe G2 treats it or the players take it a bit more seriously because we are kind of like the underdogs. It's easier to be the underdog.
No, people don't expect you to win.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So for them, it's more pressure.
Damn, I'm hyped. Rob, who are you predicting?
That is actually really tough. I've been trying to like puzzle that out of my head over the course of the week, but not just because you're sitting here, I nearly want to give it to Fnatic the way the G2 have been playing recently. But as you say, G2 tend to take it a bit more serious every time it is Fnatic. And you're like, who shows up? Yeah.
If G2 had just played like the most insane week and you guys had just played the most insane week, it would be so much easier to make a prediction. Yeah. But the thing I hate about kind of what you're talking about, because of the pedigree of G2, they've won so many titles. They always seem to show up when it matters. Like, they have this intangible thing about them where you kind of just give them the benefit of the doubt. But I feel so bad when fans are like, who's going to come out on top?
Guys,
I'm like,
I will make it easy.
All evidence points to Fnatic.
I'll make it easy. It's BO1. So it's like, it's so hard to guess. Like,
you have a coin?
I would never. I would never guess BO1, right? It's just anything can happen.
Yeah, but I also think the Fnatic is performing the best I've seen.
Yeah.
From a long time for me. It's like your individual performers look absolutely insane. I think like across the board, everyone is stepping up. The way Jun has been integrated into like your early game is absolutely spectacular, working with Razork, and it just feels like the engine is rolling and everything's going the way that you want it to. Not to now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I will just use this podcast as to praise my boys, and then giving them a bit of a dopamine hit. But what we didn't actually say is, and this is the most important part for me, is like what you can see about our team is they don't want to lose, and the mental fortitude that they have, even in the tough situations. Beforehand, we would. I mean, again, there's some principles we set into practice, but beforehand you would see like, this game is over, or something like that. No, now you can see that no matter what, they will not give up even for a second, and they will keep fighting. And I think this aspect, it's like what makes me the most proud for the boys.
Yeah. Well, a lot of hype and reason to be excited about Fnatic right now. I hope that the level that you guys are at right now can continue if there are any hardships. Yeah, like for your sake, right? But right now, I think a lot of excitement for Fnatic, rightfully so. We'll see how you guys do in the match of the week. As a last note, I love that amongst the various pro player lingo, one is just a sound and it's and I instantly know what, like the second you hear anyone say it, they're about to say it's time to FF or like, maybe it's just a jungle diff. Like nothing positive is coming out of their mouth after they go, like,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, you know exactly. And we'll hope that's not the case for Fnatic. Thank you again, Nightshare, so much for joining us and sharing all this insight about your players and your teams, as well as insight on some of the other teams. That's going to do us for us here at EUphoria for episode 14 this week. Match of the week, Fnatic versus G2. look, regardless of the rivalry, it's a classic. So tune in, watch it, watch Nightshare sweat as his players, make questionable decisions on stage. Be there for the emotional moments. Hopefully not. Tune in,
Just send 'em, right?
see what'll happen. That's going to do it for us.